instructions are over. Now let's get to the best part. So our first speaker is Mr. Roy Hibbert. He is a Korean War veteran. So again, all the biographies are in this program, but I need to say a few words about Mr. Hibbert. So a lot of interesting information about him, really cool things. So born in Manchester, England. I'm not saying that right, probably. There's probably a different way to say it in England. But at the age of 18, drafted into the British Army, and then served in Korea. Married his lovely wife, Barbara, who was here with him, and then moved to California in 1960. And then for the past 64 years, they've been here. And so, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Roy Hibbert.
Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can I hold this, do you think?
Well, you just hold on to this, it's fine. It's fine.
We hear you.
I was drafted into the British Army. The day you turn 18, you get a notice in England, or used to, from the National Service. And I was drafted into the King's Liverpool Regiment. I was at the King's Liverpool Regiment for almost 3 years. And they were all Liverpool boys. And by the time I finished, I was speaking like Paul McCartney or John Lennon. You know, down your nose, the way they talk. And that's the way it was. We were in Germany, in Berlin. And Berlin was very tense in those days. It was inside the Russian zone. You could only go into the heart of Berlin at night. We were near Spandau prison. We did a guard on Spandau prison, where they had the German war criminals, Speer and Dönitz and some other people. And then one day, we were pulled out of parade, and our colonel was Colonel Snodgrass. Snodgrass. And one day, a soldier laughed at his name, and he would run up to prison, probably still there, I don't know. But Snodgrass said, "Men, first battalion, I'm sorry to tell you, King George VI died today. Long live Queen Elizabeth, parade dismissed." So we all went back to the barracks. 2 days later, on parade again. "Men of the King's battalion, I'm proud to tell you, we've been chosen to go to Korea, to the Korean War." And wow, that was some news. So he said, "We're going back to England next week, some training, some leave, and we're off to Korea." And if we can show the first picture, we were on this, no, there's a ship, doesn't matter, there we go. Well, that only took you 4 weeks, almost 5 weeks, getting to Pusan Harbour. We arrived in Pusan Harbour. Nobody told us what was going on at all, except we were transferred onto a train. On the train, it was about an 8-9 hour journey, and we were issued live ammunition. Okay, sounds like we're going to a war here. We, late at night, when the train arrived, as far as it could go, we were met by a company of American trucks. And these guys would come on when they climb aboard, you're fine, whatever. We're on the trucks for an hour. Then we're on foot, going up, walking past some old derelict paddy fields, I think. And then up a hill that we later we knew was Hill 187. And we were led up this hill. It was dark, quiet, no smoking, quiet, all of that. No idea where we were really going, except on the train we'd been issued live ammunition. So we knew that we were going in the line. Anyway, we got to the top of the hill. We were relieving the 3rd Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment. Now, we were 19-year-old kids, and these Australian soldiers were veterans, like 25, 30-year-old guys. And It was like World War I, trenches, a dugout, we were called hooches, and so we were led. I went to a hoochie, and there were 2 Australian soldiers in there, older than me, and I said, so what's it like? What's it like? Ladies, excuse the language that I'm going to use. He said, well, I'll tell you, mate. He said, I've heard the bastards, I've seen the bastards. He said, I've shot at the bastards, but I don't think I've killed one of the little fuckers. And he was very disappointed about that. And then the Australians left, and we were there. It was about 2 a.m. perhaps, and everything was secret, everything was quiet. And at dawn, loudspeakers were coming over this valley, called the Samichon Valley. Welcome, King's Regiment. We hope you like your new quarters. There was the Chinese troops broadcasting to us over the Samichon Valley. And so anyway, we settled in. There was no action at all. We were on American sea rations, combat rations, which were a novelty at first. They were so cleverly done. They got old after 2 or 3 weeks. And it was very, very quiet on our front. Night after night, to our left, perhaps a mile away to our left, on the hills, and these were all permanent positions. We could hear the gunfire, the shooting. It was the US Marines, and they and the Chinese used to go at it, and the Chinese used to come across and attack the Marines, and never very successfully, but they, that was where the action was, and our front was quiet. And it was too quiet for our major. That was Hill 187. Well, that's one of the trenches. It's a bit like World War I in a way. Let me show the next picture. That's the entrance to a hoochie. We lived in these dugouts, they were called hoochies, and they would hold 2 or 3 men. There's a soldier right there, putting his boots on, I think, in the hoochie, on Hill 187. Can I have the next picture? And then that's a terrible picture. It looks like a World War I trench, not in very good condition. Let's go to the next one. Okay, there's 3 soldiers on Hill 187. So anyway, it was fairly quiet. Every night there was action to our left, about a mile away from Marines. Chinese trying to chase Marines off the hill. And I was then made into a clerk, a company clerk, going backwards and forwards to rear echelon. They put me in charge of the payroll. Not anybody, there was nothing to buy, so you didn't draw your pay. But I was in charge of the payroll, and I was backwards and forwards from rear echelon, about a mile back perhaps from the line, and backwards and forwards. And we had a major in command, Major P.V. Stevenson. And it was all too quiet for him, the war. There wasn't enough action. He was a bit of a cowboy, I think, really. Except one night, there was a tank, a British tank, a Centurion tank, on like a lower shoulder of the hill to our right, and it was shooting at something quite heavily, no idea what. And I was in the jeep head. The jeep head was as far as the small trucks or the jeeps could come at the base of the hill. And it was a kind of big sort of bunker, if you will, sandbag and all of that. And I was down there just BSing, waiting, hoping to get a ride back to rear echelon. But the rides had all finished, the jeeps had all gone back, and so I was stuck at the down there at the bottom of the hill. And the tank, there was a tank on the hill, a British Centurion tank, that was shooting at something quite heavily. I kept hearing these shots going off, no idea what it was shooting at. And there was a phone, like a field telephone thing in the dugout, and I picked it up, and it was the Major P.P. Stevenson. Who's this? I said, Hibbert, sir, Hibbert. What are you doing there? Well, never mind. He said, Hibbert, get the Koreans out. We had about 6 Korean porters attached to the company, to a company, and they had a dugout near the near the Jeep head, very well reinforced, and that's where they lived, and they were great guys. Can we show the next picture? There's one, so you can see he's carrying a load up the hill, and they were great guys, couldn't speak a word of English, no Korean. And anyway, the major said, get the Koreans out and get some ammunition up to the tank. And I said, yes sir, we'll do that. So I went to their dugout about 20, 30 yards away, heavily reinforced, sandbags all over the place. And I said, come on, worky, come. It was about 1 a.m. I think. And come on, worky, nothing. They wouldn't come out. And I said, come on, worky, come, chinky come. And that was all I did. With that word, chinky come, 6 of them ran right by me and disappeared, going heading south. They didn't want to get into the hands of the Chinese, and of course it was all fiction, the Chinkies weren't coming, but they disappeared. And so I got back to the Jeep head and got back on the phone, it was like a field telephone to the major, and I said, he said, cancel the order. He said, the ammunition can go up there tomorrow. So, okay sir, thank you. And that was the end of that evening. The war was not busy enough for the British troops to suit our major, Stevenson. He was a cowboy in many, many ways. And the only sort of action we had was on patrols. We had 3 kinds of patrols. There was a fighting patrol, where 6 soldiers would go out down to the Samichon Valley, looking for trouble perhaps, and seeing if trouble was coming our way. Then there was a standing patrol at the bottom of the hill, and they would just listen and see if anything was coming, any Chinese were coming over. And it was all too quiet for Stevenson. He didn't like us at all. He was there, he was a warrior, wanted to work, wanted to fight, and illegally, he took out to asking 1 or 2 soldiers to go out and have a look into the Samichon Valley and to see whatever they could see. And it was voluntary. He never asked me, thank God, but he went out 2 or 3 times unauthorized. Am I going a bit long, Drew?
A bit.
Well, I'm sorry. And it was unauthorized. And anyway, the major would ask a couple of soldiers, just let's go down the hill and have a look. And we had an officer with us who'd come over with the winter clothing from the Royal Ordnance Corps. And he was with us, and he said, I'll go, sir. So there were 3 of them, went down the hill, and the next thing, there was some shooting that we heard about half an hour later. And a few minutes after that, this young officer came crawling up the hill, being wounded, and the other guy was with him, he was not wounded. The major never did come back. And it was a real scandal. They don't know what happened to the major, and it was years later that he was listed as being missing in action. So we got a new major, a new company commander, and it all went fine from there. I've got some pictures from Korea. There's an American ambulance, American Sherman tank. Oh, what's the next one? Okay, that was a gun. That was they called it the Persuader. It was the biggest field piece I think the American Army had. And what's the next one? Some British soldiers, and I think the summertime had come, and they're from A Company, and didn't do much. Once in a while we got shelled or mortared in the afternoon, but not a lot. Every night, or almost every night, there was action to our left on the US Marines. But they left the Commonwealth Division, 1st Battalion, King's Regiment, they left us alone to a large extent. Next slide. Another picture of the, here's the story. The soldier on the right, on the back row, I remember his name, Kevin Cathcart. And we used to talk, it was boring a lot of the time. And the only way to get away from it all was to get wounded, quite frankly. And we have terminology. If you have a skoshi touch, skoshi is a Japanese word for small or little, and it might be okay if you've got a skoshi touch, a little wound, get back to an American MASH unit in the hospital for a little bit more comfort, or you could go to the British military hospital in Kure, Japan. And Kevin, on the right, on the back row, he used to talk this way a lot. He was from Manchester like me, a very good singer. I remember him singing Silent Night on Christmas Eve. A beautiful baritone voice. Anyway, he would talk about getting a Scotian touch and getting out of there for a while. And then one afternoon or early evening, I was in rear echelon at the time, but he was caught by a mortar bomb, and it got him in the lower legs and the groin, and we had a Scotian touch. It was like going to an American MASH unit perhaps, or a curing touch to a British military hospital in Kure, Japan, or to a blighted touch, and that would get you back onto England. So Ken got badly hurt, his legs and groin, and we never heard from him again. He had a blighted touch, and that was the last we saw of Ken. And what's the next picture?
That's it.
Okay, we're about my son here told me to get off the microphone. Sure, give me a moment. I have a leaflet here that I picked up off the barbed wire, and we can pass it around. It's a very good propaganda leaflet. Just pass it around, and I'd like it back at the end of the program. And my experience in Korea was very, very interesting, obviously, in the word. The winter was very, very cold. The hygiene was very, very poor. You couldn't bathe or anything like that. And it was a bit more like World War I, living in these trenches and so on. But anyway, there was a searchlight every night from Pam and John shooting up there to see the searchlight 5 miles away perhaps. And the peace talks were going on, and then in July, I think it was, of '53, the peace agreements were signed in Pam and John, and the 1st Battalion, the King's Regiment, pulled away from the front line from Hill 187, and we were another couple of months in Korea, and then back on that bloody old troop ship, and we were a few months in Hong Kong after that. So that's my story. It's been very intensive, and I thank you very much.